Hello, hello, hello. Welcome again to the audio training stream, audio coaching stream, whatever we've titled it for the night. I hope everybody's doing well, staying safe as always during this crazy time. I tried something new. We're actually live on camera 5 minutes late on purpose tonight, just to give a chance for people to pop in and see the notifications on everything. I'm on the chats now for Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Checking out, see who's here. Say hi if you're here. Looks like we might have Mark in already, popping in early, which is great. Hi, Mark, if you're there. Just gonna go ahead and have a look on the social medias, make sure that everything announced properly. But yeah, let me know if you're here, ready to talk all things mixing and EQ and audio and sound and dynamics and verbs and stuff. We got some stuff to talk about, some cool announcements, hopefully. Haven't got a confirmation on the announcement, so I can't. Hey, Timothy. Nice, London. I want to go there as soon as I can after all this craziness. But it's good to have you on stream. But I had an announcement tonight. I'll try to share as much as I can. I'm waiting on confirmation from somebody, so I can't give full details. But hopefully that's exciting. Something cool for next week on Wednesday. Going to be hopefully having a cool guest join us. It's going to be really informative and applicable to anybody who's doing live streaming for any type of event, concert, performance, things like that. So that'll be a lot of fun. My phone is gonna die. That's awesome. I need my phone for some of this stuff tonight. I'll throw it on charge, but it'll be good. So Timothy, Mark, probably some other people jumping around. We've got some viewers, some other viewers in the places watching things. So say hi. Let's see, I'll pop over to Twitch real quick, see how we're doing on Twitch. We've had some issues with Mob Crush and Twitch not doing its things. Hopefully this doesn't make any noise when I do this. Apologize if it does. It does. Sorry, I'll pop off. All right, let's see. Let's go to our channel, and I'll try to mute it real quick so we don't get any feedback. Not sure yet, so I don't know if it's black over there and it's just audio, or what's going on with that. It's still loading for me. Let me drop it down. We'll go auto and we'll see if it's there. YouTube should be fine. YouTube seems to always work well. We'll go check that one, just verify everything's working. Timothy's on YouTube. You can actually let me know if it's working. I guess you could hear me. You can see me. Just verifying everything's working well. Yep. Okay. Looks like that's working good. Awesome. Awesome sauce. Sweet. All right. We got some. Thank you, Timothy. I appreciate that. We got some questions in on the Instagram post today. I haven't actually checked the Facebook to see if there was any responses on that one. Let me go pop over that real quick. I need like a billion. Well, that's funny because I actually do have a couple screens, but I need like a billion screens to see all this information in one go, so I can just glance around. It's a problem with trying to be on everything at once. I'll just pop over to this Facebook page in a way that I can see that question, because the Pages app is real interesting. Let's just go to the page. Here we go. We'll scroll down wherever it is. All right, cool. Most of the responses look like they were over on Instagram, which is easy. It gives me one place to go. Okay, so it looks like we want to go over some dynamic EQ for some lead vocals. Somebody asked, I'm gonna butcher this name. I always do. Is it Josue? Could be Josue. Tuning a room, what to consider, process, etc. Thanks. That's a huge topic, but we can touch on it. Timothy's asking, I'm betting that's you. Could we work a general live mix from gain to finish on a master bus? Yeah, we can definitely do that. We got some time. And we can do it from a live mix point of view. So that'd be some good topics to cover. Before we, hey, Northport's on. Glad to see you. Glad to see you on again. Yeah, I know. I was. I had a like a full body migraine. I pushed really, really hard over the weekend and the week prior. I got a big life change coming up. I got to move across country soon, so there's a lot of things happening with that. I'll still be streaming. There'll be a little bit of a downtime when I'm actually traveling and setting up again. I'll do my best to try to film some content to throw up while I'm traveling, but it's been a lot, so I got real fried. So no coronavirus. That's good. But sweet. Let me touch really quickly on room tuning. This is a topic that I tend to advise people to steer away from unless they have a bit of experience designing or installing actual sound systems. Proper tuning. You could definitely do some EQ on the bus and stuff like that, and your ears will lead you in a good direction for that usually. But the actual room tuning with something like smart or PA tuning, I should say, because room tuning is a little different. Room tuning is when you say room tuning, I think of how to put panels in the right places and resonators and things like that to tune the room to be as flat as possible before you put any loudspeakers in it, or with the complement of whatever loudspeakers are going to permanently be in that space. Believe it or not, that process is to me a little bit of a dark art. There's guys that know a lot more about the acoustic side of that, and I know a few of them. So what I may do is I will reach out to a couple of my friends, and I will see if we can't in the future have a guest stream with an acoustic guy who can kind of give us the bullet points of what to look for when you're tuning the room. But tuning the PA, if you have very little or no experience designing or even conceptually designing a PA or a sound system, it tends to be best to leave it to somebody who has that experience, because that's really the first place to start, is to understand how a sound system works functionally from point to point. So from input to output, and what all the different components do, and when you're splitting up highs, mids, lows, or what they call resolution on like a line array, how many boxes are going into, or how many amps drive how many boxes, and things like that. There's actually quite a bit to it, and personally I found when I tried to do that without a full quite a few years of experience under my belt doing that, I tend to spin my wheels and do things that I'm not proud of. I would want to go back to those places way back early in my career and touch them up. I'm sure they've been fixed by somebody much smarter than me. But it can be frustrating. However, that doesn't mean you can't learn it, and you can't start to study that kind of art and figure that out. So that's what I encourage you to do. Gain the knowledge, and I'll try to help you as best I can. But there's another guy online, and I'm going to give a shout out to Nathan Lively, who his content is very focused in Smart and Systune, Sat Live. So all the platforms for actual tuning and how you do that kind of thing. And he's got some absolutely great content out there for that. But the gist of tuning a PA is you start by, making sure everything's aimed in the right places in terms of your speakers. You have a look at, what your surfaces are, how many, what reflections you've got. You're going to want to make sure you're aware of the distances. If you have delay speakers and things like that, and you have them written down. So that you can, have a good place to start. And then typically what you're going to do is you're going to set your amps full open, and you're going to start with some relatively a low noise, and you're gonna start to try to time align your basic zones. Or what I do is I actually start by in one zone. I start on one side of the PA, the main boxes, and I'll make sure that I've got a good checklist to go through all my signal flow for my my test tones, and my noise, and my measurement mics and all that. And then I'll start by balancing the crossovers in one section of the PA. So the mains, no subs, and I'll make sure that my mids and highs are sort of where they need to be in an isolated box, so I can get that sector, that cluster dialed in to itself. And then from there I'll start matching. So I'll go to the other side of the PA and I'll do the same thing. I'll copy settings, but then I'll check and I'll make sure that my crossovers are all set to the right place first. So before I do any EQ, what I'm doing is I'm setting levels in the crossover to make sure that my lows relative to my highs and whatever are balanced to where I need them to be to start. And then I'll start by listening to like my mains to my subs, to get them first phase aligned to the point in the room that I need them phase aligned to. There's differences of opinion on where to do that. You could do that from the front row, the middle of the room, the back of the room, and then each one will give you a cancellation in the other zones. So it just depends on what's the most important for you. So knowing things like that and how those interactions work, because you can never have all of your speakers time aligned and phase aligned perfectly for every seat in the house. So there's compromises that have to be made. Once I've got all my relative levels and my basic time aligning done, I'll do a multi-room measurement or multi-spot measurement in the room. So I'll take either multiple mics and take a measurement from each mic in different spots, or I'll take one mic and I'll walk it around the room and I'll capture measurements, and we'll start to get a big picture of what the overall system in the room are doing. And I'll dial in some corrective EQ, or maybe even address my levels again as I look at the whole room, and I'll get that looking like I want it to look. I do not tune flat, unless the system design itself is designed in such a way that the tops have to be flat and the subs add the lift in the bottom. Most good high-end sound systems are designed so that they lift below 1K down to about 60 hertz or thereabout. They will lift anywhere from 3, 6, 9. It depends on how many boxes and how the system's designed, but there'll be a gentle slope up in the low end, which helps balance the overall sound and actually makes it sound flat to the human ear. It's not flat on paper. Too many guys I've seen tune the system flat and then it sounds like absolute garbage, and they scratching their head. They're going, but it's flat, it's flat, it's flat. Yeah, no, you're not going to produce any content that's going to come out of that room and sound relatively the same. So what I'll do is I'll tune it that way. A lot of great guys out there that tune will do something similar, so that you hear when you hear music on it, it sounds the way you think it should sound. And then even if it's a live environment with a well-treated room, when you pull the desk mix off, it's going to be fairly close to what you did. It's never going to be perfect, like a perfectly treated and set up mastering studio or whatever. But it's going to be good. It's not going to be like, whoa, where's all my low end, or whoa, there's too much low end. So yeah, let's see. A bulldozer tunes a room really well, Mark. That's fantastic. Yeah, a lot of rooms are not designed for sound, so usually the best way to get a room sounding great is to start with sound reproduction in mind at the architectural stage, with an acoustical engineer to help the architect pick the angles and the dimensions in a way that actually work, and the finishing materials, and build in any acoustic features into the room, like bass traps and things like that. Hey David, it's good to see you on. David's on Facebook. Let's see. Oh, we got another question. Delay drum overheads to the snare. Do I do it? Well, that depends. So we're going to flip over to a mix now. I hope that answers the tuning question a little bit. There's a lot to get into. Yeah, most churches are definitely not designed, and even the new builds these days are not designed for sound. They'll get an architect in and design a real pretty room, and then later on down the track they'll bring in a low voltage or a sound design company, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, why is this, why is it so expensive to get this to sound right or whatever. And it's, you can actually save a lot of money if you brought that low voltage, that AV integrator in way on the front end with an acoustic designer. It's much easier and cost effective to do it that way. So let's pop over to our mix rig, and let's see if I get this right. So we're gonna go over here. I need to switch my monitor, so give me a second. So this is a mix that I have been pulling up, and right off the bat, I'll tell you right now, this is an example mix that I've been using. So it's not a finished mix. It's not done as a mix for cohesion. It's done to show things. So there's stuff in here that's like the last time I was talking about kick, I was doing specific things to it to exemplify different different things. So you'll see like this low end bump down here and things like that. That may or may not have been in the actual full mix of this song, which I don't even know that I could pull up now if I wanted to, because it was done many years ago and plugins go out of production and all sorts of things. But we'll start with the drum overhead question really quickly. So I'm going to take my overheads and I'm going to drop it between my two snare drum mics. Actually, first I'm going to show you the two snare drum mics. This is a produced song that was properly recorded and edited, and what you will notice is things like the snare drum transients are right on the money. You'll see them start at the same spot, and you'll see them their phases are relatively aligned, even though they are polar opposite, but they are very close. And there's a reason for that. It's because when you're doing this in post-production, you can grab them and align them, and the same goes true for the kick. So you can see that the kick transients are smack bang on the money. So whereas you would typically have the kick out mic would be a little bit later than the kick in mic. Again, post-processing means that there was editing done to make sure that these drum mic timings are aligned. Let me zoom out here a little bit and get to a clean spot where there's relatively less cymbals, and I will show you something with the overheads. Let's blow this up a little bit. You will notice on this particular track, even though I lined up the transients for the snare, I did not line up the transients for the overheads for the snare, and there's a reason for that. There are two mics on the snare, and there's two mics on the kick drum, and there's a mic on each one of the toms. So this kit had three, right? If I start moving the overheads to match the snare, then I will be moving them relative to each one of the tom mics. I will also be moving them relative to the kick drum. So personally, it's a diminishing returns. Yes, you may line up your snare a little bit more, but you're going to start losing things in all of those other mics. So what I do is I will make a judgment call pretty quick, and it's usually actually done at the recording stage when I'm setting up the drum mics and I'm doing my sound checks. I will set my overhead mics to a position that sounds really good in such a way that when I am listening to the kit as a whole with all the mics on, I am not losing too much information from any one source. The way that I mix my overheads is I high pass them a little, but not a lot. Let's see if I can show you an example. So this high pass filter is right up around 111 hertz, somewhere in there. And I use that as a picture of the overall drums. I don't use it as just the cymbal information. So there's a lot of love in that low mid range that I'm looking for out of those overheads, and I want to make sure that they, it's complementing the kick, it's complementing the toms, all that kind of thing. So and I will do that. I will be listening for that when I'm actually at the record stage. And the same holds true when I'm doing a live mix and I'm doing my sound check for my live mix. I will set my drum, my overheads up for that. By the way, if you're interested, I am currently scouring my archives. I will find it. I know I have it somewhere. If not, I can probably reach out to the organization I worked with. I did a session at an expo a while back in Washington, where I actually had filmed drum mic placement and a teaching on drum mic placement. So I'm going to try to find that and edit it to make it a little shorter than it was, and I'll try to get that up. But I've been looking for it. I've been planning to find it and put that up. So I will try to get that out as soon as I possibly can. So the answer to the drum: do I line up my drum overheads to my snare? Typically not. What would happen is I would have to delay my snare in order to do that. In post-production, I could pull my overheads earlier, but in a live environment, I would delay the snare to meet the overheads, because the overheads are farther away, and if you can't put negative delay on things unless you've delayed everything, and then you can subtract some. But typically speaking, you don't do that, except maybe a random. I've seen one broadcast console where the engineers have set up a standard delay on every channel to line back up with video. So in that particular instance, yeah, you could take some up to, they were running 40 milliseconds on every channel, so you could take negative 40 off. Just checking my background because I got real self-conscious that it was cracked open. I got a drape behind me to black out my background, so the video looks good for you guys. So I hope that answers that question, Mark, if any. Worry more about the timing on multi-mic'd single sources. So your two kick drum mics, or if you have two mics on the snare, or potentially if you have two mics on a tom. I find the two mics on a tom to be super 80s and not necessary. And I say 80s because it was something some guys were trying in the 80s, and I've seen some guys try it just for fun these days, and it's not necessary. Let's see. Let's go into the other two big questions we were getting were dynamic EQ or multiband on lead vocal and an overall mix. So let me pull out a copy of this session, and we'll use this one to start, and I'll approach it as a live mix. And I may have to, that was coffee, so I may have to take a sip of water because that might dry me out a little. But let me do a save as for this real quick, guys, and I will do. What a day are we at? The 20th. Good Lord. This 2020 is just flying. I'm not incrementing this because this is this particular session. A little tip for you. Side note, not even an asked question, but normally when I'm working with Pro Tool sessions, I won't have this here copy of, because obviously it's just I just copied this session to start messing with it. But I'll have the name, usually a track number, and a name of the song, and then I'll have a session ID, and this will increment up from 001. And then as I do the individual phases for the production, so like 001 will be edit prep or whatever, and then 002 will be drum edits, and 003 might be bass edits or whatever. And I will have this section be what I'm doing. So like I said, 001 might be edit prep, and then it'll be 002 drum edits or whatever. Just good file management to keep in mind, and that you can translate that to anything. So there you go, free tip. So that's that. Let's pop over to the mix window. I forgot I'm on the wrong, there we go. I will get my keyboard shortcuts figured out one day. If you're wondering what's throwing me off, I got a Windows keyboard and I'm driving a Mac, so my keyboard keys are not the right thing. So live mix, right? So let's go ahead and let's pick our poison. By that I mean I've got this typical channel strip here. I like this particular channel strip because it emulates most digital consoles, but I'm going to go ahead and have a look and see if there's not another one we could use tonight, just for fun. Let's see. Unless you guys don't care. Do you care if I use this one, or do you want me to use like an SSL channel strip or an API channel strip? You guys vote and let me know. What else do I have available? I don't own all of those plugins. I just have they're just in there because I haven't organized my UAD folder to be just the ones I own. I do own the Neve ones, but I'm not particularly a huge fan of the Neve channel strips. There's things in Neve that I like, but So let's throw it out there. We'll do options are the digital console, an API, or the SSL. Totally up to you guys. Whatever you think is going to be fun / good to learn from. I will tell you that if we go with the SSL or the API, we are not going to be probably won't get a ton of runs out of it because I don't know how much processing power I have, but we are not going to see all this beautiful graph stuff here down here. So up to you guys. Let me know. I will start to clean out some of these input inserts while you guys vote. Stock plugin, love it. I can do that. That's one. Anybody else got an opinion? We'll get rid of those boys. We'll get rid of those boys. We'll get rid of those. And we'll switch those out in a second. Let's see. Session start or stream start should be, yep, that's perfect. We'll save that setting and we'll copy it and we'll paste it. Yes. That will leave, but we'll mute it. One day I will get an actual console and this will be much faster. Oh, yep, I know. Stop yelling at me. Let's do we'll copy you. Yep, that sounds good. I'm gonna have to put a bunch of gain on the master bus just so that you guys will be able to hear properly because it'll be too quiet. And then I will stream. Oh, that one works. I could have used that one. Whatever. I'll copy that one because I believe this one's got. Yeah, it does. It does. That one has I've dialed in some of the Q settings that drive me nuts every time I do it. I'm gonna leave these in because typically on my console, I will have those. I will have those dialed in like that. We will leave that extra gain in there for right now. What I will do is take the threshold up on that. I will leave that gain down, take that threshold up, and I do believe, yeah, that's fine. I'm gonna mute this. Just give me a second, guys, because I realize that this particular setting that I pulled up is doing that. I don't want it to do that. I want it to do that. So I'll just paste that real quick. Yes, did that work? Yes, it did. Sweet. Again, learning my key commands all over again. I know. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Safe for the win. Stock is safe. Yes, anybody who's working in Pro Tools is going to have this plugin. Right? And yeah, I'll just double check that. And that's kind of a good example. So if you have a Pro Tools and you wanted to try some of these things, you could use this plugin. Also, that headache is still hanging on today. I took some medicine for it. But I've got if anybody knows my story knows that a couple years ago I broke my neck in an ATV accident, and so it puts me out every once in a while. Not often. It's been much better the past year. But I had a great chiropractor take care of me, believe it or not. He didn't adjust me when I broke my neck, obviously, but he's got x-ray machines and all sorts of things. And when I didn't have health insurance, he helped me out quite a bit. Okay, so I'm ready for this. If you guys are ready for this, we'll dive in. Normally what I do is I will start, let's do this real quick. Let's do a shift option, mute, and then we'll do, yeah, okay, so we'll take the group off. Oh, those can stay on. No, we'll start with those off. All right, cool. Can I turn that off? Yes, I can turn that off. Those are just the groups for Pro Tools. That will let me individually turn things off. And then I may have to boost the master so you guys can hear. So let me know if it's way too quiet. I have 9 dB of gain on it. So let's go. I'm walking up to a console. We're doing a live mix. The first thing I'm going to do, other than making sure that I know the set list and I've listened to the songs, and I've evaluated what they're doing in them, is I will have a conversation. Now, typically a lot of organizations or churches or whatever you're working with may already have a set way they do things for sound check, but I will have a conversation with the MD, and I will say, hey, this is what I'm hoping to accomplish to make sure that I honor your time. I'm hoping for a 5-minute drum check. I'm hoping for a 5-minute band check and a 5-minute vocal check. That's 15 minutes. We can knock all that out for sound check. And this is after a line check. So a line check I would have done with the text, not with the band on stage. And that's where we check every line is good and clean and replace cables if we need to. Band gets on stage. I talk to the music director or whoever's in charge, and I say, this is what I want to do. Gonna do a 5-minute drum check, and in that 5-minute drum check, I'm through kicking toms by 2.5 minutes, or I do time, so a groove, like a basic 2 and 4 groove, and then I'll do for about 2 minutes, and then I'll spend the last about 3 minutes on the toms, because you don't hear the toms enough during rehearsals and the show, so I want to make sure I get them right. And so I'm prioritizing where I'm gonna not have a lot of substance to work with, and then I'm moving on to the band, because typically a band is a guitar player or 2, a keyboard player or 2, a bass player, and usually that's it. Sometimes there's a percussion player, sometimes there's a DJ, sometimes there's a string player. I've had all these things, and it squeezes that 5 minutes a little bit. Sometimes there's a choir. So that squeezes my vocal check sometimes a little bit, but you know, everything's a little bit flexible. But if I can honor their time, it sets a great tone and a great relationship with everybody. So where did I move my overheads? My console will have a scene set up that I am familiar with. Everything will be laid out in a way that I am familiar with it, so that I can be efficient, just like my Pro Tools session here. So I have kick, snares, toms, hi-hat next to overheads. That's how I like to run. And I always do kick in, kick out, snare top, snare bottom. This plate is just hanging out here because it's just makes more sense to live it here. It's our snare plate for the evening. In Pro Tools, I put my ambience mics there. That's only in Pro Tools. When I'm working on a console, they're deeper into my layers and farther off in my peripheral stuff. Then I'll be bass. Then it'll be my guitars, including my acoustics. And in Pro Tools, I typically lay it out where it's rhythm guitars and then leads. And then I have a whole smattering of keyboards here, because I typically will go keyboards next on my live console as well as Pro Tools, and then it just depends on how I group them together. Yeah, if there's a lot of them, this is a moderate amount, this isn't a lot. I will organize them in a way that kind of makes sense. Pads, pianos, leads, arps, things like that. And I'll have my lead vocal followed by my BVs. And on my live console, the only way that would differ is I will have my vocals laid out as they appear on stage, left to right, so that it's easy. And then I will have my effects and any buses that I have and need to generate at the end of my Pro Tool session. And I will have those obviously where they live, typically on a console. So you won't see me putting an instrument verb right in the middle of my console. You won't see me putting, I don't know, what's another weird thing? Vocal delay right in the middle of my vocals, typically speaking. Sometimes I put the DCA that controls it there because there's not enough room, and it just kind of makes sense. My DCA setup is very similar to that. It'll be kit, and in my kit I do all of my drums plus my bass. So all of my drums plus my bass. Oops, wrong keyboard, but you get the picture. And then it'll be gits, and that'll be all of my guitars. And then it'll be keys, and that'll be all my keys. And then if I have enough, I'll have a tracks one, and I'll have a band one. So all of my music DCAs is you know, kits, gits, keys, tracks, and band. And the band one is it controls all the previous ones, so that I can pull every bit of music out in one fader, or I can control the different sections of the rhythm section and the melodic section with just my DCAs or VCAs. And then I will have a Vox fader that has all of my vocals. I do not have a lead vocal DCA and a BV DCA. I just have a Vox DCA. And then I will not put any speaking microphones, MC or preach microphones on a DCA. They will live on their own faders, because I love saying this, but guess what, guys? That's off. If my fader is down, it is off. Unless I have a pre-fade bus going on, which I should know about. But if I pull that fader down, I don't need to pull a DCA down. So trust your console, right? And I can't, there it is. Can't click the default button on that. And the reason I put my speaking mics not on a DCA, just let them live on their fader, is because I don't want to have to worry about throwing two faders up if a microphone suddenly jumps on stage. I want one fader to worry about, and I don't even use my mute button. Like I said, fader down is off. I will have, following that, I will have an effects DCA that is an overall effects DCA, so I can pull all my effects out. And I will have a delay DCA, which will be, typically speaking, the throw into, if I can control it. Some consoles don't let me do this, but it'll be the bus control, so the input to the delay effect, so that I can pick and choose what words are being sent, so I don't have constant rolling delay. If I can't, I'll live with it. It's not that bad. That allows me to do delay throws at the end of phrases. And then from my broadcast experience, I'll have a PBS DCA, and that stands for playbacks, and that's all my video rolls and things like that. That way I can prep my video rolls in an environment that has like 2 playback decks or 4 playback decks. I'll get a call on comms that'll say standby sponsor loop on VTR 3. So that means I will put VTR 3's fader up to 0. And if they accidentally roll it, I'm not worried because my DCA is down. And then when it transitions in the event and they're going, okay, rolling sponsor loop on, rolling sponsor loop, all I do is throw my playback fader up, and I'm not jumping in layers. So it's time management and layer management. With this particular kind of setup, I have my left hand on my DCAs, my right hand on my vocals, and my MC and speaking mics right next to it. And I can fly through a service pretty much, or an event pretty efficiently that way. So I will have my console set that way. We'll get into our sound check, and what I will do is I'll start with a drum time, like a groove, which I believe I have highlighted. Oh, nope, I lost my highlight. Let me just go and find a good spot. I want a groove that is not a lot of cymbals or toms. So we'll start there. That looks good. And let's see. I will pull this fader down. I start with my faders down, and I do that for comfort, basically, so I don't blow anybody out of the water. Hopefully I don't blow you guys out of the water. And I will bring up my fader. As I'm doing this, I'm looking at my input, right? So if I had started my sound check and it looked like, oh, that's gonna be, so it looked like this, right? So he's playing and I'm seeing this meter down here. I'm already knowing I need gain, so I'm gonna go gain it up, right? Before I even touch my fader. But I'll get it to what is nominal for that console, right? So you'll see that this mark here is 0. Let me get some water. I'm drying out here. I got a fan blowing on me, which you can't hear because it's a brilliantly quiet fan. Somebody on YouTube pointed out this brand called Opolar. It's like a little tiny USB fan, and it's fantastic. It's very, very quiet. All right. Hopefully that'll last me for another 5 minutes. There's this 0 demarcation on most consoles. Some of the older consoles had the 0 right at the top, and that was a full scale digital 0. This 0 is a -14 0, typically speaking, or a -18 on some consoles, and that 0 is there for a reason. That is the representation of the effectively nominal voltage the console was designed to operate at. So you want your gain there, right? So my average gain is going to be plus or minus 3 to 6 dB around 0, especially for sound check, because you know everybody's going to get loud. This particular recording is in the middle of the performance, so I know I can be at 0. But once it's there, I will go ahead and start to bring the fader up in the house fairly quickly, and I'll listen to what my source is doing with the room. So let's emulate the room a little bit by turning on the hall. We'll just pretend that that is our room, and we'll deal with it. So it might be a little quiet. If it is, let me know. I'll pop back over to OBS and we'll turn it up. Actually, I can tell you right now I'm going to have to pop over. Let me pop over to OBS real quick. I'm going to pause this. I need to do this because it's going to be a bad example if I don't. So let me turn up the fader that you guys are listening to. I'll flip back. A little tricky when you're running like this, but it's worth it. If you guys can bear with me, it's worth it to do it this way. Flip my mouse back. Okay, so let's look at this again. So I know I'm pumping in some extra gain on this here, so I'm going to pull that back real quick. That's a limiter. Normally when I start, my console doesn't have any gain, any thresholds, everything's flat. That's very on purpose. It's because I want to practice what I'm doing every time I'm doing it, except if I'm on a tour. Then we've had rehearsals, and then I'm running a show or a musical or whatever, and it's repeated because we've already run those rehearsals. But the first time I'm walking into something, I am at 0 flat. So let's have a play again. Okay, so I've effectively canceled that out. So what I'm looking for here is on my master bus is relatively the same thing. What I saw before was that I was up too hot, and I didn't want that. What I'm going to do now for the sake of you guys is I'm going to turn it up, and it's going to increase here. I would not normally do that. I normally leave this where I need it, and I keep checking that I'm living around the right area. Hopefully that's a better volume for you guys. And what I'm listening for is the extra low end. Extra low end. And I need that punch in there, but I want some of that mid-range gone. I just noticed that we're not getting that studio because I couldn't hear it. Okay, there we go. That's going to emulate some of the... So you can hear how that room is adding that Reverb is acting like a room, adding some stuff. So I'll take that under control a little bit for some clarity. But I want the snare to have some body. And I'll soften the cymbals, but I'll give them some air. And that's typically what I'm listening for. I'm listening for any interactions with the room, how smooth the cymbal sounds. And then the snare is going to be one of the loudest things in the overhead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this on, obviously. I'm going to be right around 4 to 1 on the compressor, and I'm going to bring it down so that I'm getting at least 3 dB every time the snare hits. And I'll make sure that the what the compressor's doing, unless I know it needs to bounce. Is not bouncing too much audibly, and we'll check it. Okay, that'll smooth it out. And the reason I want to smooth that transient out is because I'm going to have a close mic in here that I'm going to be able to use. It's a good idea to... sometimes I will wait to put the compressor on until I've heard the mics together, because it will interact with the phase. But the other school of thought is on this, that you can use the effects of the compressor while you're checking the polarity with the other mics. I haven't really found that one way is better than another. But for the sake of the example, I will turn it off while we bring in the snare. And I can tell right now that the gain is already good, because every time I'm getting these ballistic hits, they're right around 0. So I know that that close mic is in, because I could hear the change. We will first check what it sounds like. Not a lot of low end. I actually know that about this track already. But there's not a lot of low end there to worry about. But if I'm in live, I'm going to have a sub rumble or something I may be worried about, or a sub behind the drummer. So I'll go ahead and put a little bit of protection for myself by rolling that off. Right? And then we'll go back to listening to both and checking our polarity. So quite obviously, when it's normal polarity, it's fine. So I'm listening for that. There's like a little bit of a honk in that lower mid. That I'll kind of tuck down a little bit. And I'll make sure that the overall low end has some love, but I'll get it up to 0. I will check my mains, and I'm a little bit hot. So here's a tip. Let's pull back a little bit so that we're a little under where we are. So we'll pull back. It's a dB and a half right there. And let's pull back another dB and a half, so we're down 3 from where we started. Oh, that went too far. Let's do 3. And then we're probably a little hot on the snare too, so I'm going to come back 1.5. Okay, it's getting us close. I know I'm going to add a kick drum and stuff, so what I'm going to do is... So this is stuff I think about when I'm mixing and I'm wanting to stay away from clipping my bus. I'll bring it back 3. I'm going to be adding quite a lot to this, and I may want to pull it back a little bit more, but... and then what we'll do is I'll go ahead and listen to this snare bottom. It's a little hot. We know we want to sit maybe down around -3, -6. So I'm going to start by anticipating and pull back a little. I'm doing this on purpose. I would do this at a sound check is probably where I would set it, because they're going to get a little over. And I'm going to listen to the low end. Again, not a lot of low end in there. Not too worried about it because it's a good recording, but in a live environment, maybe a sub. The reason I'm doing this now is because this low cut high pass is going to give me a phase rotation right above its knee frequency. And if I don't do this now, and I go checking the polarity, and then I do this, there's an example in one of the other videos, you can actually knock yourself back out of phase in the low end and lose your punch without realizing it. So I'm going to start with the low end off that I cut off that I want to, and then I'm going to check polarity with the overhead and the other snare. Okay, so it's good. It's probably because we're pretty close on that. Yep, we're very close on that low cut. and what I'm hearing it add in too much in that area. And that's where I'm going to want to keep that. Okay, now, right now, we're in a pretty good starting position. There's some things we're going to want to do to this to make it sound much more polished, but I wanted to talk about something really quickly. A lot of people, when they want a punchy snare, do this. Okay, makes sense. You can hear it punch more, but you also hear all the other bleed from the cymbals and everything else that's going on, and then there's also that, let's see if I can show this, that crap. That I wasn't loving, right? So that's because that snare is unhindered, right? That head is unhindered. That top head doesn't have anything. Usually they could put a wallet on, they could put a snare weight on, they could do things to dampen that. But if that ring is there, it's usually because it's allowed to vibrate. What the snare bottom head has that the snare top doesn't is it has a chain that runs all the way across it that's always dampening it and changing what the vibrations of that head do. So if we want punch, you hear how I'm not finding any resonance? No matter what I do. So here's a little secret for you. Sometimes you can get some body in your snare from the snare bottom. A lot of people don't realize that. This particular one, just because I'm here listening to it like this, I want some air and it's not there. And I can hear that. I'll pull some what I call plastic out. Okay, so it's just a little bit airy. Normally I do all my EQ decisions listening in context, but I was just there listening to it. Anyway, there's a hot tip for you. Now, let's talk real quick about our compression. Let's turn our compression for overhead back on. And off. I'll show you on and off. What I want you to listen for is the focus in the stereo field in the center. When I have the compressor on, that snare should focus in the center. When I have it off, it should be kind of everywhere, but that's what you're listening for. Do you hear it focus a little bit into the center? So when I go to compress the let's actually listen to this top. Let's give it a little bit of air because it's a little bit of a flat dynamic mic. So what I'm going to do with the oh, I really wish I can show you this because it's Pro Tools. I keep forgetting. Cool. I will show you what I'm going to do with the compressor. So with compression, windows, right? The window, the envelope of the transient is very important to understand what's going to happen, right? So we have this big peak right there, and then the rest of it kind of dies out. That what I'm pointing at is this is the full envelope of the snare. Ignore the top because that's the kick. But here's snare bottom, here's snare top. All right, so our initial impulse is here. Let's get out of our initial impulse is here. Relatively, we've got a negative wave and then a positive, and then it kind of peters back out, and then you've got your full sustain, and then the release, and then the full your sustain is here, and then your release is all the way out here. What we're gonna do is we're going to try with our compressors to get the beautiful attack, this high frequency attack that's here, right? We're going to allow that to come through, but keep it under control. You see how this one goes way up in amplitude versus that? We're going to keep it under control. We're going to let that first bit of high frequency transient come through, control this craziness, and then I'll give it some nice punch and elongate it. So this waveform would look more like, and how's a good way to, let's see. I'll use a volume automation and then I'll delete it, right? So if this volume was sitting down here to emulate our, Nope, too far. So I'm trying to, here, let's just do it. Let's just do it the hard way. Okay, so what we're going to try to make happen is something like this, right? So we're going to try to, instead of it going like this, right? I'm going to undo that. We're going to want it to go like, nope, that's a bad example. I can't draw. So we're gonna allow this sharp one to come through, and then we're gonna take it back under control, right? And then we're gonna just make it a little bit fatter and denser as it goes through. But we're gonna allow that first transient air to come through, right? So we're gonna delay our attack. You know, set it to quick relative to high frequency. So like 15 millisecond is quick relative to high frequency, and I can show you that by doing this. If you look up, and I will show you this again, let's change this to minutes and seconds. If I select that first transient, that whole thing is 3 milliseconds about. I wonder if this time scale is accurate. It should be. I'm just seeing something a little bit strange because typically speaking, full. Yeah, okay, so it is a little bit. So we're looking at that. So we may actually find a little bit quicker to get this under control would be better. But 15 is where we're going to have a lot of that high frequency content. So we're going to want that compressor to grab down. And then we'll use the gain and to increase a lot of this tail to make it longer. On the bottom snare, and let me just get rid of all this crap because if I don't, we're going to have problems. On the bottom snare, we'll put this one up here, and then we'll make this one. So what we're going to do is, I want volume, and we'll draw this in so that it looks better. All right, so on the bottom one, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want it to all be like this as much as we can, right? We're going to want to lop this down so it has no transient. We're going to let the transient punch happen there, and we're going to allow the overheads to help that, but we just want, and then we're going to bring all of this up. So it's really, the whole thing's going to be like much more compressed and sustained. We're increasing that overall tail by having a real fast attack, and then allowing it to the full 150 milliseconds to release. And let's get rid of all that crap because we don't need that. And back at 0. So let's pop back over. Actually, we'll make sure that we select the loop again, pop back over, and we'll start doing that. Okay. So let's listen for that. And these ratios, we want them to be aggressive. So we'll start at 6:1. And turn you on. Okay, so right now it's 100 picoseconds, or microseconds, sorry. 1 millisecond. 5. 15. So by doing 15 right around there, we're going to get more crack out of it. Right? And we know that the full window was about 120 milliseconds, so I'll show you what 120 minus 15 is 105. Oh, sorry, my bad. There we go, 105 milliseconds. So without it, with it, it's almost like it's way more aggressive, right? And I'm gain matching relative to what it's doing, but we'll set that gain what we need it, right? So let's look at the bottom real quick. So you can hear how that crack came out, which is what we wanted. We'll do something similar. We'll start at around 6:1, and we will pull this attack as fast as we can make it. And we know, again, that that window was about 119. So we'll go 120, right? And we'll start smashing. Oops, I forgot to turn on. Should probably turn these on, but reset them. Pretty aggressive, like 910 dB. And I will turn this off. Eight. Sorry, my dog is deciding to bark at the other dog. Listen to the overall length of the transient. So it's like plap, 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 plap. So it goes a little bit longer. This is as fast as I'm about as I can get this. If we sharpen the knee a little bit on this one, make it a harder curve, we might get a better result. If we soften it, it's a little bit more natural like it is, but I actually really want to lock that transient off. We can do 120, so 60. We can listen to what 60 milliseconds sounds like. And I'm more preferential to above. That's more of my sound, right? So now when I listen to these together, and we'll try to show you with and without compression. So this is with, without. And you can get even more aggressive if you want to. Kind of wimpy. And I'll just, oops, it doesn't accept input the way I thought it would, sorry. So I'm emulating what like a lot of guys do with the 1176 now. Right? And again, if you want it to sparkle a little more, and we'll throw everything in overheads and snare. So we went from that to something more like that. Now I'm going to run and check my overall levels again. We're way too hot, but okay, so let's get back under control with our levels. So we're still pushing over 0. All right, so I'm going to just say Hurley's bad a little bit here. We should have cheated down to -6. So we'll turn this off. This one's good. This one, we will turn... Hold on, let's do this without the compressor on, so we know what our actual gain's doing. Yeah, that's relatively good. I think I want a little bit less. Come on. There we go. There we go. And then because I brought that down about 2 dB, I'm going to bring this threshold value down. So it's 50, so it'll go -52 roughly. Just so that the compressor is doing the same thing. And then I'm going to bring the top down to probably -6. See where that puts us. Yeah, so it's another 3 down, so we'll bring it down 3 on here. And then when I turn it back on. What I'm trying to do is stay around 0. Live, I always cheat down -6 at a sound check. So I'm back closer to 0. I just want to make sure we stay there. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to mute that one and just have a listen again and rebalance. That might be the thing that's throwing me off right now. Oh no, okay, we're good. It's weird doing this with in-ears. That's the thing that's throwing me off a little bit. Okay, we're still around 0. And then we'll bring this one in. Probably going to push over 0. Yeah, a little bit. Not too worried about it. Anyway, so let's hear one more time without the compressor. And I'm going to have to pull this back because it's just to make it up. Okay, it's a little bit lifeless to me. Throw that one on, throw this one on. Better. Okay, a little bit more angry. I really wish I could do this with my speakers, but it would be a nightmare for you guys. So with the kick, same thing. I can tell you right now this is gain too hot, so we'll pull it back. A little bit more. Now, I would never ask my drummer to play a groove like this. So for the sanity of everybody involved with this live stream, I'm going to see if I can't go find something that's a little bit more... That kind of makes sense. It's got a lot of cymbals in it, but let's see. I don't think that there's a section that he plays. Normally I ask him to play like a hats, kick, and snare. But we might have to deal with it with that ride. Let's just deal with it. You know, real world stuff, you get what you get and you don't get upset. Pull that gain down on the kick out, so kick in. Now kick in, same deal. I don't need a ton of this low end because I have a kick out that I'm going to use. Sorry, the dog. Just whack my dog in the tail by accident. I just need to get her attention and she'll stop. Hey, Giovanni, nice to have you on stream. Welcome from the Philippines. So we'll do some air. Just to start us off. Oh, look at that, guys. I'm on the wrong channel. Get this. Yeah, we're going to know that we're going to be up there. I don't want this too much of this metal sound. I just want air like a fet. Cool. And I don't want that right now. And I know that I'm doing this on purpose because if I don't do that, I get that phase rotation above the knee frequency, and it was going to be a bad interaction with my overheads. So definitely in polarity is fine. I usually go about 4-to-1 on this one, and we're going to be doing something similar to the snare, to the kick with the compression, but not quite as aggressive. And I'll show you why. Now, this particular plugin allows me to do that with the low pass, which you can't do on most consoles. So bear that in mind when we use this. So I'm going to use this one filter on this kick out, right? And I know that so we're somewhere around 90 on this kick out. I'm going to be just below 90. All right, 85 maybe for this one. Maybe 80. On purpose, because I don't want there to be too much interaction at 90. And I only need that in this. We'll just hard code this one at 80. And I only need this low end thud from this out mic, this kick out, which sounds like this. So if you don't have good speaker system or good in-ears, you're probably not going to hear this. You'll also notice that the gain has dropped because this meter is metering after that. So that's fine. We want to make sure that when we're doing this, we meter the full thing, right? Because if all these other frequencies clip and we don't know it, it's gonna not sound nearly as good. It's probably gonna have different phase properties too. So, but if we wanted to adjust after, that's very simple to do with the compressor or an attenuator after, like an EQ attenuator or something. So we're going to listen to the kick and the overheads. I don't solo live. I just kind of do this as I'm running through it. Now, I don't know what you guys are thinking, but with this one out of polarity, it sounded much more focused and much more heavy to me. Now, that's very interesting to note. I believe if I go here and I show you, you see how these polarities are relatively close? They seem to be that way. Well, it's because we're using those two filters to get the content we need. This is why you gotta put your filters in if you know you need to use them, and then check your polarity. Don't do your polarity first. So here's a good section for some kick. Where are we? We're over here. Okay. Let's do that. Let's loop somewhere in there. I like that. So for this one, I want to get off this pretty quick and let the weight come back. Now, where this sits relative to the rest of the kit, we're gonna go back and check that in a second. But I'll do right about 3. I don't like more than 3 on the kick when I'm live. And for the kick in, or the kick out, sorry. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me explain something. This is really good live in a bigger room. What you may want to do is you may want to allow this longer hit through. Let's go show you. Kick. Here you go. What you might want to do is allow this full low end transient to come through, right? So right around, this one is around 60. It's usually around 50 or 60 milliseconds, right? So I'm actually going to emulate that. So we'll attack it at 0.06 because of the tuning of this drum. And so that's where we want it to attack. We're going to actually get a little heavier on this. And then we will go look at this. And this will help us challenge the low end resonance of the room. So the rest of this, we're going to want to probably another cycle, 2 cycles right around here, right? So we're probably going to be here 30 to 80, somewhere around 80 would be out. We're way out here, which doesn't really matter. So we're gonna go around 30 milliseconds on the release. So 0.03, and then so that will allow that first low transient through. Oops, I should not be selecting things. Cool, right? Now, let me see if I can show you what this sounds like by itself. It's got more pop and punch. It's going to sound more like an impulse response. What this will do is it will put an impulse into the room, light the room up, and allow the reverb to carry the low end. This is a great way to manage it. Now, if I was gating, what I would do is I would do something similar. I would use a trigger or the sidechain on the high frequencies to open this gate as fast as possible without it sounding clicky, like there's an alias in there. An alias is where the digital to analog converter can't render as fast as the algorithm is moving level amplitude changes, and it actually it redraws a click, like a high frequency click, and so you'll get aliasing, popping, clicking sounding on your gates. So you want a slow enough attack that you don't get that, but fast enough that you open up as quick as possible for the transient. And then you would hold right around that 30 to 50. When do we say this one was good at 30, right? 30 milliseconds. Oh, it's got the same thing. I need to do 0.03, and then you would get off of it as fast as possible, right? So we're going to release at that 0.06, and you want it to be hard. So that would be like, yeah, so gate it. We're just going to gate it, and then we'll turn it on, and so here, I'll see if I can emulate that aliasing for you. See, at around one millisecond, it sounds a little bit gentler, where it sounds a little too snappy at 20 microseconds. So I get up there where it sounds less snappy. The depth, I will always keep around 6 to 12, so it doesn't fully shut down on me. And then the sidechain trick that I was talking about, we'll listen to our sidechain. Okay, all this down here, all this rumble, if we were using this, every time we hit a tom, every time the sub hit or whatever, we could have that information trigger it. So I'm going to get rid of it and use just that upper end, sharper, faster transient that's going to open that gate much faster, right? So now we just got to readdress here. Without this gate. Oh, you know what? Let me just make sure this isn't an example where we've cleaned it up already. Okay, we have. All right, so the only reason this is a really bad example is these samples have been cleaned up to minimize their cymbal bleed. That's why you're not hearing a ton of cymbals there. Let's see if we've got anything good down here. No. What about the chorus where he's slamming on the ride? Down here? Nope. Okay, so a little bit of a tricky example because of that. This is edited, so we've cleaned out some of that cymbal bleed, but the theory still applies, where you would gate out and just allow, in a bigger room with a lot of reverb, you would allow that punch to come through and let the room do the rest of the work. We are not going to be using gate because it's already clean, but we will use the compressor. And I'll just make sure that we take the sidechain off because, oh, that was right, I need a peak. So get that back to where I wanted it. Right there. Cool. So what we would want to do in this scenario, broadcast scenario, we would want to fill out the rest of that low end with that beautiful kick out mic. But in a live scenario, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something similar. I'm going to get that low end transient, which starts here. So this will be the positive wave, which it's rendering out all the other interactions, but then it comes down here. So that full transient in live is about, let's see, 17. I am so confused by this timescales, wasn't it? I am so confused. I thought it was, didn't we just measure these? What is going on? I thought we just measured these. All right, I'm just going to say it. It's usually about 50 milliseconds because that's usually what I go for. So it's 40 to 5, 50, somewhere in there. It'll give you, and if you do the calculations for the actual frequency and the amount of time, like a single cycle of like whatever frequency, pick 142 or whatever, it's going to be somewhere in that ballpark, 30 to 60 milliseconds, right? So we're going to want that full transient to come through, and then we're going to start clamping down on it, right? So let's go with the full thump at 45-ish, 43. Let's go with that, and I'll just get rid of the rest. Oh man. Anyway, this has been a day. This session is throwing my head through a loop. The other thing that you could do if you want more of a studio sound on this kick out is I need to stop selecting. I do this. This is literally my life when I work on a record. I go back and forth. I go, why can't I hear anything? If that more studio sound, it would be more like you jump on it a little bit quicker, and then you would let it out, so you get that more ramping low end sound. But if it's live, I'm sort of going to be up here around that point. Let's go 0.42. Let that first full transient, oopsie, I forgot my 0. Let that first full transient come through, and then shut it down. 0.042. Oh gosh. And then we'll just double it somewhere around 80. It's a safe value. Okay, cool. Right around 5. We'll turn this guy on, and we'll bring up it. And on the gating, same thing. let that full transient come through, and then slam it down. All right, so after I've stumbled over everything and confused myself thoroughly. Okay, we'll turn the gates off. Or the compressors off. The other thing I might do with this kick in is get that, what I love calling the back of the ZRX, that backseat chest thump, 3 dB, 4 dB of like 90 to right around 100. Without it, with it, it's just got that nice hard chest thump. Cool. Hope that helps. Hope that makes sense. So we've got our kick and our snare. And remember, I do this all within a matter of 5 minutes on a console. Live, because I don't want to be wasting anybody's time. So let's go over here and let's listen to, actually I want, does this song have any, it doesn't. Okay, let's do, this should be a fill. All right, what does this sound like? Okay, this is a bad example because he's rolling on the tom. What about this one? There we go. So first thing we're going to notice real quick, because I'm doing this to show you. Live, you would not have a lot of this flexibility to see all this information, but it's relatively common for most drums, right? We have a transient, a stick hit, right? Which is going to be in here. And we have that initial thump from the stick hit. That also has that airy high frequency hit, that crack, right? That's going to be around 0.003 seconds, so 3 milliseconds. And then we've got, this is good to understand, right? So we've got a low end, roll, or a fuller low end is going to still be around that, anywhere from, so higher tune, so maybe, yeah, that does look right. So 20 milliseconds-ish right there. And then you've got a sustained tail, right? And that's going to be about, this one is 787 milliseconds, right? So if we listen to that, let's listen to that. Oh, and for the sake of it showing you, I'll turn off the reverb. Okay, so boom. Right, so we want to be aware of that. Again, this is edited, so I don't need to worry about gating on this, but we want to be aware of those elements of our window, of our envelope, right, as we're working with this. So same rules apply. We're going to turn on our overheads, and we would be listening like this when we're doing a sound check. Okay, this is a little too much. Yeah, we're at 4.9. We want to be down. We're emulating a room, so the room should act the same for all. Okay, so first thing we're going to check is, I'm just going to show you what it sounds like and do our high pass. We want that weight, but we don't need all of that. Right? So now when we listen to it with the overhead, we can check our polarity. Oh, what do we notice? We notice that our gain is too hot, right? So we'll start in that range. And we'll okay, so we can hear it. Now that's in polarity. So out of polarity is definitely much better. All right, so let's go ahead and start dialing that into the mix. Listen to the room. Actually, you know what? Let's get a longer sample here. Somewhere in that neighborhood. What we're listening for is definition. Between 5 and 10 K is where you're going to get that crack in air. Right? So this means that by doing this and getting that definition, we don't need to run it as hot in volume. We'll definitely hear it when it's paired with the overheads. And for here, I'm going to go 5. I'm going to go on the compressor 5-to-1. We want a nice crack or attack in there, but I'm going to want that full thump. So I'm going to allow about 25-ish milliseconds through before the compressor starts clamping down. Oh, come on, this is really touchy. And then we're going to hang on to this release. We know that the total window is somewhere around 800 milliseconds. We're going to hang on to this release at least half of that, or somewhere around 300, right about half of that, so that we can sort of bring up, when we bring the gain up or we set the level, we're going to bring up that release to be a little bit thicker and denser. I'm looking for 6 decibels of reduction. I do this live. Okay, and now I'll show you without it. And then with it. Okay, just pops out at you a little bit, right? Cool. Now we'll follow suit with the rest of them. I am also super aware that I have an automated timer on my light to shut them off when I would normally end, but I think we'll be okay tonight. So let's go find... I normally ask the drummer to do these one at a time, right? So let's go find this one down here. We'll have a look at it, and we'll see the same kind of things. All right. Oh, it's Tom 2, the second rack Tom usually. Sometimes it's the first floor Tom. All right, so let's go ahead and listen to this one. Ooh, forgot to turn the volume up. First floor Tom sounds like. So this is like, this doesn't have that long of a tail. Go. So it's the note itself. Yeah, that's close enough. Yeah, okay. But it's going to have similar properties. So this is right around 925-ish. It's a little harder to hear, but it's going to have similar properties where we have a an initial crack and stick hit thump, and then so that's going to be somewhere around that yep, about 6. And we're going to have that full initial transient. Let me show you. So that full thump right around here. Yeah, 12. And then the tail kind of starts. So we're going to do similar things with this. We're going to let him cycle through while we take our sweet time. First thing we're going to do is listen to the extra low end that we may or may not need. Oh, and our gain. So we're a little hot on our gain. There we go. And then we'll bring it back up to level. Now it's a very low tune. So for the sake of showing you what we're needing to get out of this, let's find the note. So in my opinion, it's going to be right around 70 somewhere. Let's go ahead and this is a little bit of a trick, right? A little bit of a trick. We're going to boost that note because it's not, this particular drum has drifted on us, and we know we have another tom that's going to be somewhere a little lower than that. All right, so I can see on the analyzer that we are coming down right around 50. So yeah, so that's sort of where I wound up, about 55. We'll take this one, we'll widen it out just a little bit. Another thing I'm going to try is a shelf. Okay, I don't like the shelf. So 20, 30, 40. If you this is how you read this: 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 72-ish. I was right the first time. Should have just not second guessed myself. So here's a little tip for you: don't second guess yourself, and so it'll cost you time and frustration. Okay, so we want this up first because we want this in place first, I should say. We're going to need to hear more of that note because in my opinion, it doesn't have enough of it by itself. Let's listen to the overheads in that tom. Out of polarity. Actually, I would never have him play that. I would ask him to play it faster. Okay, Okay, so when it's out of polarity, it has more focus and more weight. Cool. And what I'm hearing... Okay, let's check this really quick. Yeah, I knew that our mix is a little bit off on these verbs, so I'm just going to pull that back. I'm hearing too much of that in relation to the thump. We already know and found that thump that we need, so let's give it back to it. I'm going to pull more of that empty mid-range out, and let's give it some crack and definition. Cool. And I think if I'm not mistaken... Okay, I can't do it. Let's start with the same settings. So 5 around 25 and 360, right? So let's go 5. Let's go 0.025. Oh, of course that didn't work. 0.025. And let's go to 3.360. So somewhere in that ballpark. Turn it on and we'll... And then we'll get it back up. So without it. With it. So for me, I'm wanting to hear a little bit longer on the attack. And a little bit longer on the release. Actually, maybe a little shorter on the release. Cool. And that's a good starting point. And let's go find the last one. Try to blow through this as quick as I can. It is difficult when it's not a console. I do apologize. It takes a little bit of time to get through. But I don't really need to go over the window. It's gonna wind up being about the same for the third tom. Let's go ahead and listen to the note. Yep, that's typical. Because it is a super big tom. We're gonna have our work cut out for us. I can see on the analyzer that I'm using to my advantage right now. So this one picks up right around 60-ish, yeah, just below the other one, and rolls off down to about 40. Yep, I can hear that too. So we'll come up right above 40 on that, and we'll go verify on this. Cool. And I know right away we've got too much room, so I'll fix that for us before we start. Right there. Cool. All right, now let's listen to it with the other one, but we'll take this out of the equation because we don't want that messing with our polarity. Oh, let's set it back. We've got too much gain. That's what the problem is. Cool. Let's check our polarity. It's a little deeper out, so we're going to stick with out. We're going to get our note in there this time. We've got a lot of garbage. And this is a little bit of a softer hit, so I'm aware of that, so I'm not trying to get out of it what I'm not hearing. So I'm not trying to add a whole ton more crack, but there is a lot of garbage in here. Cool. And then we'll relatively start around the same point, 0.025. We'll go 0.360, and this one was, 0.360, and then this one was 5. We'll start in that neighborhood, and we'll see where we get to. Cool, it's where it needs to. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go listen to all three with the overheads, and I would ask the drummer to play a tom groove. So we'll go here. So that first tom's a little bit hot. We'll add the kick in. Cool. Cool, and then we'll see if we can't find ourselves a point where the snare comes back in. Close enough for government work. I like my toms to have a little bit more edge above, but if I wanted to pull them down, I could quite easily pull them down. I'm not going to worry about the hats. I don't use them at front of house. But I would move on to the bass. Now, the way that I run this, it depends on the genre. Woohoo! Sorry, guys. That was loud for me. I'm sure it was loud for you. So we'll go channel strip, channel strip. Same thing. We'll start with, yep, that's fine. We'll bring the gain down. Bring it up. Pretty good. It's about an active bass sound. I usually want to hear a little bit more mid-range. So for compression, I'm usually at 6. And I'm pretty quick, but I'm off of it around about 100. The reason I'm pretty quick on this is because I don't want the thump on the bass guitar to overtake the thump on the kick. All right. Now, the other thing we want to listen for is what's going to fight with our kick, and we know where our kick sits. All right, it's going to sit in that range. But typically you wind up having to pull this out too. So if you run out, or you started with the wrong filters, so let's move this one down. Now, this bass is strong here. I'm going to pull a little bit out now, but not a lot, because I know I might need that for the electric guitars. All right, now I'm just listening for balance. This is where the kick sits. So I'm just listening for balance, right? I'm gonna take a little off the low end. Leave room for that sub kick. And the other thing I'm leaving room for by doing this is I'm leaving room for the subs and the tracks. That's basically where I start on the bass guitar. Now, see this one here that says bass low? Here's something this is something I tend to do. So if I am working with live and I know I want to be able to manipulate my atmosphere, I might give that a little bit of low end, and I'll do something like I do with the kick. Sorry. I'll pull this down. Where were we on this one? 11. So let's go. We'll start there, because that's usually the same preamp I use. And then, so the gain will be set the same. So all the stuff that the subs are doing, and we'll get this one up to 12. More like a limiter. Now. Cool, so let's add them together. Notice that? They're the same signal, but I have to flip one. Has to do with the phase interaction. I may not want that, right? Because that's up here. This time I do actually want it. But I want more compression. Okay, so what I would do then live, I would ride this for all my atmosphere moves. So I would do most of my service like this, but as the choruses got bigger or I needed more because the crowd's going a little harder, I'll push that up. So that's how I do that. And then guitars. We've got these two going, so we'll start with this one, but we'll bring the gain down. And I'm going to go ahead and copy that now so we don't blow us out of the water. This one is from the previous section. So when I do a sound check, I would start with this. Let's get rid of some low end we don't need. This is in the... Nope, it's not. Let's turn this up. Actually, let's do this so I can pull these up together. Sorry guys, wrong one. Come on. Just a tiny bit. I know that this guitar tone is actually really good. This boost that I'm going to put somewhere around 200 is to help the melodic range of the guitar. And then I may brighten it a little bit around 5K-ish. What you notice on the analyzer, this particular guitar tone is fantastic, but they normally start to drop hard after 5K. Cool, and then because this is a stereo, we'll... Oh, that did not work. There we go. For the compression, I'm usually at 4. I'm usually letting a ton of that attack come through, so 30 milliseconds, and I'm usually getting off of it real fast. Sorry. Never doing more than 3 on a guitar like this. And I'm usually making it up too. That just keeps it where I want it to keep it. And then, there we go. And then we'll just set it where we want it. So I can see that I'm 6 dB down from where I want to be, and or it's probably more, it's probably like 8. So what I might do, this has a lot to do with the fact that there's 2 of them as well. As I pull them, I'll just go ahead and pull them down on an attenuator or somewhere that I can, so that I can sit them where I want to sit them. Closer to 0. Let's go ahead. This guitar is a similar tone, I think, so I'm going to go ahead and paste the setting that I have. Copy that one. We'll paste that one, and we'll paste that one. And we'll go ahead and set these guys. Now I'm hearing a different part out of that guitar, and something that's bothering me. So I gotta pull more out of that range. So we'll get rid of that for a second and we'll go listen to this one. Oh, okay, and he stops playing. That happens all the time. We'll listen to this one. Actually, we'll take a little bit more control of this because at a sound check I would have them play the parts over and over. Woo! Sorry guys, we'll stop that. We'll regain this one. We'll take some low end off of it. Copy that setting. I'll see if I can grab these as a group. So we'll use these two guitars as our primary. Now they're both stereo right now. What I might do live something like that, where I pan one side in and then I pull those sides down a little bit so that the width is wider. Right? I'll throw some keys in. So this is a string pad. That is way too hot. Has a lot of low energy. So I'll make some room, and we're probably going to wind up bringing this down even more. This is going to have a lot of low end that we don't need. You'll notice I'll bring the gain down. These are very high RMS tracks, overall loudness or perceived loudness. And I'm only addressing the EQ that is bothering me. The reason that's bothering me is because it's going to start fighting the guitars. And I've got plenty of low end energy that's going to be doing what all of that's going to be doing. So I want to just accent the pulse. This one, again, this is just some more craziness. So we're going to bring that guy way down. And it complements this one. Now we did a trick on this one before because this one is not wide enough for me. On a console I wouldn't worry about it unless I had the ability to do it right away, but I would delay one side versus the other. Maybe this particular... I don't believe I have... Yeah, I don't believe I have the ability to... I may be wrong, but I don't believe this has a delay built into it. I'd have to add one. But anyway, that's noise. I'm not even going to worry about that right now. So here we go. We've got a synth bass. that's just doing some more craziness. So you can see where we're losing territory for our bass guitar. And if I had all this live, I would be kicking myself, but I'm just trying to build this as a tracks line real quick. I would treat all of this as one tracks thing. So let's go and get into vocals real fast, because this is where we want it to be. Stuff's gonna get stuck in my head. Let's go this section here. Yep, let's go to that section there. So we got quite a bit of verb going on, so we'll pull that back down to the same area. Hear the waters roar. So this is about where I would gain this. I'll be on the shore. I can see that she gets hot sometimes. I'm going to need to compress it. I'm alive in you. You have made me new. Your love has. So I'm not too worried about how high I'm going on that high pass right now, because it's live and I'm going to have a room to contend with. So sometimes I have gotten pretty high on these. Hear the waters roar. I'll start at 6 on the vocal. I'm usually pretty fast on the attack and the release. So what you'll notice is I've gone pretty hard on this compressor, but I haven't gained it up. I gained it first. I checked the gain first, and on her average sort of like moderate volumes, she was under 0. She was popping up to 0, and then when she was really getting into it, she was going up to +6. So what I've done is I've not added any gain. I'm just controlling her with the threshold and the ratio. And if I need to go up to 8, I will. But by not adding gain, I'm not worrying too much about my gain to feedback. So if I'm without this compressor and at the right gain and I'm not feeding back, then I know I can do something like this and not worry too much. The worry comes in when I start adding more gain. Hear the waters roar. Tides are steady pulling me. I'll be on the shore. A little bit of interaction with the room that we've got emulated. A little bit, not a lot. And there might be something gnarly. What you might have on your console is a de-esser as well. So we'll emulate that really quickly. Stock de-esser. Where are you? I actually don't know. There's the Dynamic 3 one, but I'm not sure I know where the new one is. So we're just going to go with this one. Right? So you may have this. So let's... listen. This says 13, but you can hear how much else it's picking up. That's this particular. All de-essers are different. So those are what we kind of want to get rid of. Let's stop listening. Hear the waters roar. Tides are steady pulling me. I'll be on the shore. So the reason I switch it off of high frequency only is because S is range. They're not in any particular area, and this particular de-esser is not the best. Hear the waters roar. Hear the waters roar. That's not bothering me. Actually, I may actually do this prior to in this instance, but it just depends on what your console flow is.
Tides are steady pulling me.
So without it.
Hear the waters roar. Tides are steady pull. Hear the waters roar. Tides are steady pulling me.
Cool. So they're a little softer. Here's a good example of when we might want to use a multi-band as well. So let's do, my favorite one is the FabFilter Pro Q3. Where are you? Pro MB, sorry. My apologies, guys. So let's do this. Let's, this is what I like to do with the multi-bands is not EQ. Oh, we do want that one in.
Hear the waters roar.
Actually, let's do this too. Let's do this before we compress because sometimes this will save us on compression too.
Hear the waters roar. Tides are steady pulling me. I'll be on the shore. 'Cause more of you is all I seek. I'm alive in you. You have made me new. Your love has taken over me.
So we've got a couple of ranges here that we want to take care of.
Hear the waters roar. Tides are steady pulling me. I'll be on the shore.
Okay.
More of you is all I seek. I'm alive in you. You have made me new. Your love has taken over me.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get each one of these to act like a compressor to do the thing that I want it to do. So this upper mid-range gets really barky on real quick, so I'm going to make it a real fast attack. And we're probably going to, let's start with the same sort of 6 dB or 6 to 1. And this is, I don't know if I can manually enter. I'm going to go hard because this particular one's a little soft for me. Hard and hard because I want this to react fast. And
hear the waters roar. Hear the waters roar.
I'll bring this down to where it's working and raise it up because right now it's sweet and I don't want it to do anything. I don't want it prepared to. And the range, we'll even go harder. We'll go down to -12 so we have some room to work with.
Hear the waters roar. Tides are steady pulling me. I'll be on the shore. Hear the waters roar. Tides are steady pulling
here,
me. I'll be on the shore. 'Cause more of you is all I seek. I'm alive in you. You have made me new. Your love has taken over me. And I collide as the waters rise. Feel the flood of mercy see.
So,
hear the waters roar. Hear the waters roar.
Let's go back over to that craziness area.
Tides are steady pull. Me new. Your love has taken over me. And I collide as the waters rise. Feel the flood of.
So without it,
me new. Your love has taken over.
It's kind of hurting.
Me new. Your love has taken over me. And I collide as the waters rise.
So now I have that working in my favor. And I can reduce this back to something a little bit more normal. And I can flatten out this EQ. I'll turn this one back on. Because it's, so when she's singing sweet and lower, it sounds good. And when she's singing a little bit more energetic, it gets a little gnarly. So we'll just go ahead and use the multi-band in this instance because somebody was asking about it. And I really need to flatten out these EQs, but there we go. Got them all. Cool. I can pull that down because now I have a multi-band that's working on this. So let's go ahead and we'll put this threshold up.
Your love has taken over me and I collide as.
So now we've got a little bit more natural sounding. We don't have to use so much EQ.
Your love has taken
So that's sort of how I would dial that in. Now I would repeat the process for the rest of the vocals. And then because the vocals are singing on typically the same microphones, right? I would start as a starting base, as I would copy my setting, right? Paste, paste, paste as a starting point. And then I would start looking at the rest of the vocals. Hold on, let's see. I would start looking at my gains. So they are all singing nice and hot down here. So I already know we got one that's really loud. So let's check this one out. So what we're looking at is this channel here. So if you see this one here. For the other vocals, the BBs, I would want to go warmer. So I might actually...
I'm alive in you, you have made me new. Your love has taken over me. You and I collide as the waters rise. Feel the...
I'm looking for the solo.
Overjoyed to know you, get to know you. I'm alive in you, you have made me new. Your love has taken over me. You and I collide as the waters rise. Feel the...
So I would do this and make sure it's on the areas that that are going to bother me. So for this one, this is going to clean up her voice a little bit for me. And there's just something in the upper frequencies that's driving me insane with this voice.
I'm alive in you, you have made me new. Your love has taken over me. You and I
So nice and soft.
as the waters rise.
So that way when I put her with the lead vocal,
Oh, what a joy to know you, God.
she fits, but you can still hear her. And I would continue on. Also, I would probably do something similar here. And I would continue on with the other vocals, right? This is a... Make sure that we are in the same range for gain. So we'll take this multiband and we'll check it. See, the area that's bothering me is a little lower. Actually, I actually have the ability to take this other band here. Come on. Just in case I want to DS it from here. There we go, that should be better.
Oh, what a joy to know you, God, to know you. I'm
purposely darkening it.
You have made me new. Your love has taken over me. You and I collide.
And take a little bit more of that dynamic out of it so that it sits better. Now I can tell you that I'm probably going to need to come down because I'm down quite far on this, so when I bring it up...
Oh, what a joy to know you, God, to know you.
And I will probably copy over there. And this other vocal is going to be louder. Yep, much louder. Let's take these off. Actually, give me 2 seconds, guys. I need to stop something from happening. And we'll go into... There we go. Now my lights won't shut off. So you can see real quick, we've got some craziness up here. So we're going to want to take care of, and then we'll probably match that up there. See the, yep, we're going way up. Cool, and then we'll use the multiband to help us.
What a joy to know you, got to know you. I'm alive in you, you have made me new. Your
Again, I want this a little bit warmer. And we're going to use the high pass and the low pass. The reason I do that is because I want that lead vocal to shine more than the BVs. And then we would just start building our mix. Now, right now we probably have like this here that's missing, so we're not hearing a lot of that. It's because this is not just mixed down to 2 tracks. And this is going to be loud, very loud. So we'll take you guys, we'll copy you over. There we go. Just copy these over here so we can actually hear the full session. Cool, so we've got a lot of that happening. And then a lot of the other stuff that you're not hearing is all down here with the keyboards to finish out this mix. So in a live environment, all of these keyboards would have been pre-mixed down. And these guitars would really be two stereo channels, so there's a lot to get through in this. But that is how I typically approach building my mixes when I'm working on them. There's a lot of control that I do when it comes to guitars and vocals and the dynamics, and then there's a lot of crafting that I do when it comes to the drums. This methodology, I've quite literally had a few people, including large studio owners that happened to be at concerts that I was mixing in Miami, ask me what samples I was using when I actually wasn't using any samples. All it was working with the drummer to tune the drums properly, set the mics properly, and then just do some of these techniques in the mix. So I don't believe you need samples all the time to get great drum sounds, but sometimes they're fun to work with. So we're coming up on 7:45. We've gone a little longer than I normally go. So if there's any questions, now would be the time to ask them. I've covered the 3 that were on Instagram. So I am happy to dig in and answer any questions now for the next 5-10 minutes. Let me know if you guys have got anything and this has been helpful to you. Yeah, so hopefully that was helpful. And then the master channel that I didn't really get to, we normally do like I pulled this back because look at when we're actually sitting at 0, we're sitting at 0, which is what all that gain staging was going to help me get to. But I normally do like a 2-to-1. Well, my attacks tend to be anywhere from 30 and 100 to 5 and like 200. It just depends. It just depends on the song or the content that I'm doing. So, and I'll try to only do about a dB or so. Just to glue it together. And then if it's broadcast, I usually need a limiter. And then if it's broadcast, not that one. So that's typically where I widen up on my mixes before going to mastering for actual mastering. But, you know, for broadcast, you need to push harder. but I don't want to do that now. So there's no questions, or if everybody's had their questions answered by tonight's stream, which is great. Hopefully that's the case. That's what we want to see. I'm gonna start closing it down for the night. But let me know. Again, I stream usually Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, and it's always audio coaching like this. And if there's anybody you know that could benefit from this, please share this with them, and subscribe to the channel, youtube.com/c/James Arthur Hurley. Follow me on the Insta and the Facebook and all that kind of stuff. It's James Arthur Hurley everywhere except for Twitter. That's James A. Hurley if you're on Twitter. But yeah. So I hope this was, again, helpful for you. Let's make sure I don't mute my mic here. Make sure it gets muted. Yeah, so again, I hope this was helpful. If it was, let me know in the comments, share this again. And I hope that I can see everybody next stream, which will be Friday, 5:30. I'm a little distracted right now. I got my family wanting me to get out of here, but yeah. So anyway, I look forward to the next stream. Thank you for joining in tonight, and catch you later.